This video is a joint project between Rachel's English, Jason R Levine, aka Fluency MC, and Vicky Hollett, the video producer. It originally aired on WizIQ. Enjoy!
The best in ELT with Fluency MC.
Listen. Oh, listen.
Rachel, it's so nice to be sitting down with you to talk. I met you once in real life.
That's right.
But like many people, I feel like I know you from seeing your videos and following you. I have a lot of respect for your work, and I'm so happy to have this chance to talk to you. I guess the first thing I want to ask, I know a lot of people are interested in, is how did you get into teaching in the first place? Mm-hmm. Was it English as a foreign language or a second language? Was it something else? And then how did that connect or evolve into teaching pronunciation?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a bit of an unusual path. I did teach a little bit of ESL, but mostly Rachel's English grew out of something totally different, which was I went to school for opera singing.
Right.
I have a master's of music and opera performance, and so through that, I was getting really connected to this part of my body.
So it was pronunciation first, in a sense, because you had this background in opera?
Yeah. The ESL work that I did was useful, but I don't think it actually is related at all to the Rachel's English thing that I'm doing, even though I did have that experience. So mostly it grew out of myself singing in other languages, and so I was studying the pronunciation specifically and the phonetics of Italian, French, German, English for the stage. I had studied Spanish. So there was that, my relationship to learning the pronunciation of other languages, but maybe even more so, it was just spending a decade really focused on breath and, tongue placement and these kinds of things. And I think that gave me a really clear language to talk about pronunciation for other people.
Did you have a language teacher helping you with that, and a music teacher, or were you learning the pronunciation of the languages through the music?
It was in a class that was specifically diction for singers.
I see.
So it was always related to the goal of singing for the stage. And it was focused on pronunciation and not so much the languages, although I did take a semester of Italian, a year of German, and a semester of French. So
you almost had no choice. They focused you on pronunciation?
Yeah,
and
they
did,
because, if you only have 1 year and you need to get all of these things under your belt, then that's what's the most important. Because as a singer, you can memorize the translation and, the feeling of what goes where. But in order to sell it, you have to have to really sound like you know what you're saying. And
you were teaching English during that time, or you'd taught before?
I did teach English as a second language a little bit during that time at a place in Boston where all of my students were Korean, and it was mostly one-on-one or two-on-one 30-minute sessions, and I really loved it. I think the rhythm of the language is so important, and the melody, and for me, having the background in singing has been really helpful for that. Partially because, singing is rhythm and is melody, but then also I think I developed an ear through that for when I hear someone do something, I can imitate it quite well, and then I can find out what needs to be changed. So often with students, I'll imitate, think what needs to shift, and then be able to articulate that to them for their pronunciation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do they know you're doing that, or is this sort of your best kept secret?
They do.
You're revealing
No,
right
they
now?
know, because they'll be talking, and I'll say, okay, hold on, and then I'll do it myself, and I'll say, okay, your tongue needs to make whatever adjustment.
I do that actually with grammar and vocabulary. Like if something's high frequency or not, I can kind of tune into the collective use of English somehow from listening. But I don't have that gift with pronunciation, so that's great.
For the W consonant, the tongue tip is down here, and the back part of the tongue stretches up. So the tongue stretches this way. Wow. For the R consonant, the back part of the tongue does stretch up here towards the middle part of the roof of the mouth. The front part of the tongue pulls back. So with the W, the tongue is stretching. With the R, the tongue is sort of pulling up into itself. I think I just have a real interest in the human voice and how we produce sounds and vocal health and this kind of thing. So that's where my interest lies. Not so much in even teaching a language, or I mean, certainly not grammar. Sometimes teachers will correct my grammar in videos because it's not always perfect.
It's all about your passion.
That's right.
Follow
and
your passion.
so, like, pronunciation and the human voice, that's where it is for me.
So, what happened as far as getting your work up on YouTube? Did you first imagine putting a video of yourself up there and reaching just your students or more students? Or?
No, actually, I didn't have students when I first started the videos. I first started the videos when I was living in Germany, and I was studying at a language institute there, so most of the people that I was in contact with were not American and also were not German. They were from all over the world studying German. And so I had a friend there from Turkey, and he was interested in American English because Hollywood is such a great exporter of American English, and wanted to sound more American. So we just played around a little bit with a few of the sounds, and I was telling him, you know, what his tongue should be doing and this kind of thing. And he was like, "Oh, you're really good at that." And I thought, idea. I actually, in undergrad, I studied computer science. And in order to keep that skill set going, I had been wanting to make a website. I just didn't really have a topic yet, but I knew that was something that I wanted to create. And so when he told me he thought I was good at that, I thought maybe that's my idea. And so I made a few videos, put them on YouTube, connected them to a website, and just went from there.
And what was the reaction at first? Did you?
Nothing. There was no reaction for a long time. Well, I wasn't doing them with a business mind. I wasn't promoting at all. I was just exploring, basically.
And that was okay, probably, at that point?
Yeah.
Or did it make you worried and nervous?
No,
like, nobody
it
likes
didn't make
my
me
approach,
worried and nervous. No, not at all, because I wasn't doing it for an audience. I was mostly doing it as a way to explore a website production kind of thing.
It's great that you had this interest in both pronunciation and computers and websites.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But you weren't an expert, right? It just got you more
into
thinking about. Yeah, no, not pronunciation. I mean that. I'm just wondering, especially for people out there thinking about doing any kind of online anything, but especially teaching, or students who want to study online who might be a little afraid of technology, thinking that they can't do it. It sounds like you kind of dove in.
One step at a time. Oh, totally. I mean, when I realized what I needed to learn, I learned it. I did not start Rachel's English at all with an idea of what it would be. Yeah. Like, in no way. And I'm still not sure.
And that's important to point out, because it's so well done now. I mean, I think someone who hasn't followed you, you know, from as long as I have and many other people here may have, would just think like, wow, she just boom. But it didn't happen that way. No. It grew little by little.
Yeah, it started out in a dorm room in Germany.
When was that, by the way?
That was 2008. So this October will be my 5th year anniversary of posting my first video.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
In advance.
Thank you.
That's great. I want to ask you more about the rhythm of English, because I focus a lot on that too. And what techniques have you found most useful? Because there are a lot out there.
Yeah, well, I'm still developing that, actually, but I've had a lot of fun recently working with students where I actually take the actual words out of the picture and we just work on rhythm. So, for example, let's just take that phrase, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, for example. And when you take the text out and you're just focusing on the rhythm, then the main thing I have to do with my students is to have them make their short even shorter. So da, 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 trying to get them comfortable with that kind of length. And then once they start having like the rhythmic language down and they're comfortable with that contrast and with making things that short, then when they put the word back in, it's just unreal how much better it sounds.
And then they're so aware of the difference. Right. So if you don't hear it yourself, feel it yourself, then you're not going to catch it. When people say it, you're not going to be able to.
It's such a matter of boiling things down to the most simple units for teaching. So like the L consonant and just drilling that, or in this case, the rhythm. Drilling that just as rhythm out of the context of a word or a phrase. And then, you know, you can teach people, well, this rhythmic pattern can apply to all of these different words. And so, yeah, then as they really drill one word and one pattern, they're actually making themselves comfortable with the pattern that can be applied to tons of different words and sentences.
And just like you said, you're still developing this.
I
so
am
imagine
still
where she's going to go with
no, I'm excited about it.
teaching the stress and what I call shrinking and linking. Right? The linking goes in the shrinking.
Yeah.
I just want to go back. I wanted to ask you, when you first started out and you're making those videos, did you think about the fact that so many students don't have enough time in the class? I mean, you were teaching, you said, a group of Korean students?
Yeah, that was about a year before I started the Rachel's English thing. Okay.
So was part of it, were you also inspired or motivated to try to deliver something to individual students who wouldn't necessarily have that kind of attention to pronunciation?
In a way. I mean, when I was teaching at the Institute in Boston, all of my students told me no one else cared about the pronunciation the way I did, and they really cared.
Sure.
So they really wanted a teacher who really cared.
Well, can you imagine someone trying to learn a language who's not concerned about pronunciation? But it's true what you're saying. I hear this complaint a lot from students that their teachers aren't focusing enough on it.
So definitely that was in the back of my mind. And the videos were made completely for self-study. I know that teachers do use them in the classroom, but my original idea was just to have a great resource for students to learn on their own. Because for me, I mean, since I've left college, everything that I've had to know, I taught myself. The library or online resources or whatever. I mean, languages, computer stuff.
That's interesting.
And I love that kind of learning.
Well, I can see how that has benefited you in your work.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, I wanted to make something for English like I wished I was finding for French and German and Italian. So yeah, I thought it was really fun, and I wanted to sort of provide this service for students. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you made them for self-study. You didn't really think about a teacher bringing them in the classroom. But now, I've noticed a lot of teachers using it in the flipped classroom model. The other day, literally the other day at a college where I was doing a workshop, teachers were talking about the problem we just talked about pronunciation and how students want more and what should they do because they don't feel trained enough to do it. I think that's a big reason why it's not.
I think so too. I've had teachers say the same thing. I don't know how to teach that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I'm a teacher trainer, and I used to think, okay, well then my job is to try to train up teachers to be able to do that. And now I'm wondering if that is the best way, because the other day, these teachers were gathered at a college in New Jersey, and they were talking about this, and then one teacher said, you know, there's this great teacher online that teaches pronunciation. Students could just watch her. And I knew she was going to say her name. And she said, Rachel's English, and true story. And
awesome.
You know, I was smiling to myself, I'm going to have a conversation with her about all this stuff. But you know, what she said was, what I do with my students is just, you know, ask them to watch those videos. You know, we do some stuff in class, but then they watch on their own. Or I learn from Rachel as a teacher how to do this, you know, in ways that I haven't been able to from books or even from taking classes.
Yeah, no, it feels great to know that I'm providing something that can be helpful to teachers too. Because, you know, teachers, obviously it's one person and they're reaching many, many, many. So if I can help the teacher, then there's just that many more people that are benefiting from it. But yeah, I think the idea of the flipped classroom is so great because, you know, not only do the teachers not need to learn every single thing to teach directly, they can sort of be a curator of other resources and oversee the process of learning for their students. It's a very specific skill set to teach pronunciation.
Absolutely.
Different maybe than the skill set to teach a language and grammar and classroom management
you
and
would
this
know,
kind
and
of
she
thing.
would know that better than anyone, I think.
That's right. So, you know, not every teacher needs to be a great musician and a, you know, super great at teaching pronunciation if they know other resources that they can recommend.
Well, aren't we at a time in history with education where, you know, teachers to be facilitators, guides, curators, you know, mentors. You know, if you want to learn to be a great pronunciation teacher, fantastic. But if you don't, or if you don't have time, what's the point of being a mediocre one when you can go see Rachel and Rachel's English?
Right. I mean, a good teacher is maybe one that knows, like, well, this person teaches this so well, there's nothing more that I feel like I can add to it. Let me point my students in that direction, let them work with the material, and then I can be here for questions and guidance and that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think ultimately it's just going to make education a lot better.
Yeah, I think so too. So you had that experience teaching in a classroom. Someone the other day said, talking about ground teachers or teachers on the ground. I love that instead of like first life or real life. So are you a ground teacher also?
I'm not right now, actually.
You're not on the ground.
I'm not on
just
the ground.
Online.
Yes, only in the cloud. But I do have plans to start developing some in-person, maybe workshop kind of things, then maybe move more into a longer-term classroom situation. I'm really not sure. I mean, for every video I make, I have ideas for 100. And yeah, I feel like I have a lot on my plate with what I'm doing virtually. And so I do really want to move into that because I think the in-person aspect.
Well, they can
is
go
so
hand in
interesting.
hand, can't they?
They can. It's
to
just
throw
a
out
matter
another
of,
term, the blended learning
right.
doesn't just have to happen with the teacher flipping the classroom. It can also be people are watching your videos, but then here you are in person to do something that you couldn't do, and then it's back to virtual.
Definitely. So I see myself moving in that direction at some point, but it's not in the short-term plan.
Okay. You just got back from a trip.
I did.
And I was spying on you a little bit on the trip. I don't usually spy on people, but I knew I was going to...
I made it easy.
Yeah, I guess it's easy, isn't it, for us to spy on each other, and many others who are watching, we can spy on all of them.
Right.
So it's kind of fair. So tell us where you were, and also tell us how much was work, how much was pleasure, because I did see that you met some students where you were, but tell us where that was and what it was like.
Well, I had my first ever meetup in Berlin. 2 students came. It was great. Yeah.
Not 200?
Not 200. 2 students came. Neither of them are German.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. We sat down to coffee. We were there for about 2 hours and just
very cool.
Discussed everything about who they are. It was just fantastic getting to know them as people. It was very motivating, actually, for me to think, these are real people. These are the people who are using my videos, and like, wow. I mean, it's easy sometimes, I think, to lose track of that when, as in my case, I'm only doing virtual teaching. Yeah. I'm doing no one-on-one teaching. Yeah.
Rachel, there are so many people out there who want to meet you at meetups in Brazil, in Russia,
yeah, I would
in
love
Taiwan.
to do more, definitely.
Yeah. So, and you said you're interested in doing the on the ground classroom workshops.
Right.
So when are you going to where?
Well, the most vocal group of people is in Brazil.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will probably end up there at some point, I hope.
I hope. Fingers crossed.
But also, I live in New York City, and that's such a melting pot. There's so many people there. It's crazy that I haven't done something in New York City. I should.
Wow. We should talk about that.
We should.
Great. Rachel, I know a lot of people out there, both teachers and students who follow you, are probably really interested to know how you make your videos. How do you make videos? How often do you do it? How long does it take? Do you do it on your own? Do you do it with other people's help?
Yeah. Well, I try to do 2 a week, and it takes, depending on the length of the video, it takes around 10 hours per video.
10 hours per video. That includes editing all the way to the end.
Yeah, that includes everything. Brainstorming, writing out the transcript, doing my hair and makeup, the lights, all of the setup.
How much help do you get with all of that?
I had been doing it entirely on my own until about maybe 6 months ago.
Okay.
I had someone come in and help me because rather than doing it at home, I started doing it at the YouTube studios in Manhattan. Where they have all of the equipment already set up.
That must have been really nice.
It was great.
Transition.
It was fantastic. But I have to have someone run the camera and the teleprompter and help me if I meant to say consonant, but I accidentally said vowel. That kind of thing happens all the time as I'm talking. But yeah, and then there's the editing takes quite a bit of time. I try to put some of the IPA and text up on the video screen.
Yeah, I've noticed that you're doing
typing
more
the
of that.
transcript,
Yeah.
making an interactive transcript version for my website. The whole process is about 10 hours.
How much of that process has evolved from when you first started, and how much have you changed what you do, either your approach to teaching pronunciation and the video making, both in response to what students have told you or teachers have told you they liked or didn't like?
I guess I haven't actually gotten so much feedback that shapes how I make the videos. I more get suggestions for topics.
I see.
Which I
Is there anything you haven't covered yet as far as consonants, vowels?
No. Well, I still have some blend work that I would like to do.
Okay.
But the sounds are pretty much there. It's more fleshing out the rhythm. As I said, I feel like I've got sort of a gray idea of how I want that to go. So trying to sharpen that. And yeah, I mean, really, I said before, for every video I have ideas for 100 more. And I mean, I could write down 1,000 videos that I would like to make.
Do you, or do you just kind of keep them up here?
I keep track as I go, but a lot of them are like, I get an idea of a way to teach a sound, and so then that would be 33 different videos, because I would do it for every sound and that kind of thing.
Right,
yeah.
right. And I just want to take this opportunity to say, if you're a teacher or even just a learner of English or anything, if you wanted to write down your ideas and start videotaping and putting, it's so easy now to get stuff out there, even, you know, starting like you did, not with a mission to become what you've become, but just as a, you know, interest in what you were studying and learning,
just
and an interest,
what's interesting.
And at that point, you know, to know anything about a website and web design was kind of unusual compared to now.
Oh, it's so easy now. You don't need to know anything now.
Yeah, except and that way you can focus on what you're the interest. You know, not the vehicle to get it out there, but more just the content itself, which is great.
Yeah.
Have you found any areas of teaching pronunciation that are particularly difficult? That you found difficult to master as a teacher? And I also wanted to ask you, from a student's perspective, if a student's feeling frustrated with learning something in pronunciation, I wonder how much of that is due to you know, the fact that it really is difficult because of their first language, learning English, or how much maybe it's like, oh, I just didn't know this trick or something.
Right. I guess I have a couple different answers for that. First is that I think that the rhythm is the most important thing in capturing the language, the character of the language, much more important than sounds.
Rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm.
You heard it here from the expert. You heard
it here.
I'm so 100% behind you.
Yeah. And so it's been, as I said, I'm developing sort of my way for teaching that. So that's coming along. But there is one topic that I'm actually still struggling with teaching, and that has to do with the placement of the voice. So in American English, that's our core sound. It's very much so here.
The schwa, basically.
Yeah,
the elongated schwa.
Exactly. And as a singer, I have dealt a lot with placement, but not in a very concrete way.
What do you mean by placement exactly? I think I know, but I'm sure.
Well, no, exactly. That's part of why it's hard to explain and something a lot of people don't think about. But for me, it's like, where does my voice live inside my body? And for me, and I think for Americans, it's generally a lot lower. Other languages, it tends to be more nasal. And if I take American English as my base and I compare other languages, for example, Mandarin, I've had some students that just have a very, very nasal delivery. And it also just has to do with placement. Their voice seems to live so much in their face, completely detached from the body. Whereas for me, I think it really lives in the body, and then the face is sort of where the shape of the sound will happen. But the core of the sound is actually here.
That sounds right to me, too. I mean,
so that's been sort of hard to teach, because it's not at all like, oh, you need to round your lips a little bit more. It's not something that people can see that's concrete. It's like, where does your voice live in your body? That's sort of difficult.
Do you think people that develop you know, high accuracy and fluency in their pronunciation delivery through just experience, and, you know, just like anything else with language, they're not aware of what we're talking about. Do you think that's the way, or do you think in this case, or the finding, it sounds like the holy grail, if you can find where your voice is, then...
No, you can go from sounding not quite right to sounding very American really quickly if you can make that adjustment.
Does it come just from the input and the practice, or is it something that you could, you know, make a video for and people could actually find?
I'm working on a video series on it right now.
Great.
But also a lot of it can be achieved, I think, through imitation. But for some people, they'll say, I know it's not right, but I don't know why it's not right. And often, to me, it's related to placement. So I'm trying to make some videos that will talk about that in a concrete manner. Also, I'm very lucky to have found a teacher that I'm working with now named Tom Kelly. And he's an actor, and he has a master's in acting from Harvard. He has a great background, speech for the stage, and placement, and how to make someone hear you in the very back of the theater, and relaxation of the vocal apparatus and everything.
Would you say he knows where his voice lives?
I would say he does. And he seems to have language about moving that around and some techniques for that. So he and I are working together.
So if you can learn from him and then take that and formulate it somehow.
Yeah, no, he and I are talking actively about a video series where we work together on that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can look forward to more of that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll figure out how to teach it.
Yes, fast. It's almost like metaphysical.
Exactly. That's why it's so hard.
Yeah. Rachel, not long ago, I started teaching in a virtual classroom on WizIQ. I got hooked. The first time I did it, I dragged my feet getting into a virtual classroom. As soon as I got in there, people in the chat box meeting each other. Oh, I've seen you. Oh, nice to see you there. And then, she's talking, I have the mic, and we're reaching all these people the way that you do with your videos. And I just wanted to know, have you done any work in a virtual classroom?
Not entirely. I do have an online course, but it's focusing more on the student interacting with materials on their own and then one-on-one with me.
Yeah, tell us about that. What's your online course like?
Well, it's 8 weeks, and basically I cover the topics that I found I work on the most with my private students. So not everything applies to everybody, but since there's so much one-on-one time, that doesn't really matter. If something that they need to work on isn't covered in the course, we work on it together.
It's always one-on-one, or do you do small groups? Or
it's always one-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah, but
do you Skype, or do you use Skype?
But actually, Tom, the teacher I was talking about, is teaching a course for me right now. So I did it 4 times. He's doing it twice. And I think we're going to have a good enough sense for what worked well and what could work better, that when he's done, we're going to brainstorm and I think really revamp it to include much more of that sort of, 1 to 5 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because
once you're more certain about what people share, their needs
and about
and
how
their
it works. Because I haven't done it yet, but I'm looking forward to it because I think when students can hear another student being coached and they're not actively engaged and having to react, but they can just watch, I think that's a great opportunity for learning too.
Yeah, I agree. And then also you can meet more private students this way because more people will come into those classrooms, and then you can...
They learn from each other, they learn from me. I think it's fantastic. And also just meeting each other, knowing people from all over the world, it's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
When I first started doing this, I was making the videos and they were getting popular, and so people were asking me, do you teach? And I hadn't yet ever online.
And that must have just really
it was crazy.
Shocked people to hear that.
And so I wasn't sure how beneficial would it be to teach someone on Skype, with pronunciation, especially when you've got the mic and the speaker thing. But
so what's it like?
It's been great.
So if I invited you into a virtual classroom one day, you might accept?
I would love it. I would love to see what that's like.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm teaching with students, but also I have a plan to bring teachers together coming. Stay tuned for that. Yeah. So of course I would love for you to.
Yeah,
come.
that'd be great.
Excellent. Rachel, it's such an honor and privilege to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's been very fun.
And this is the first episode or edition of Best of ELT with Fluency MC, so I'm really, really happy you agreed to come, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah,
and
you too.
I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation with Rachel's English. I know I did. And please stay tuned for further editions of the Best of ELT with Fluency MC, only in WizIQ. Thanks so much. Peace and much respect.
Don't stop there. Learn more about us and our work. See my playlist, American English in Real Life, or Jace's playlist, Colo Tunes. And the producer of this video, Vicky, has fun, minute English lessons you'll want to be sure to check out. Thanks for watching.